Over to
Okay,
you.
so we'll start off with, does anyone know how does one get funding? Besides,
No.
you know, besides having, you know, the Mohammed Kar give you money
So
to,
I
as a
was
startup.
doing some basic research in Berkeley. I applied for a few grants, so I know. But if you ask me today who to apply to,
Right, okay, well,
then that's.
that's fine.
uh,
Now, who knows the difference between what a fellowship and a grant?
Between fellowship and the grant.
Yes.
A grant is for a specific project, and a fellowship is for a research period.
No.
Okay.
Grants for research and especially for clinical practice skills.
Awesome.
Fellowship is for time. For time period.
But who gets what? Who applies for a grant and who applies for a fellowship?
A fellowship is personal and grant is for a project.
Okay.
Grant
Yeah,
is
close,
like a
yeah.
group of
Close.
researchers ask for a grant, and a person, individual asks for a fellowship.
Close, but not there. Okay, so a grant is for the research project itself, where you have someone who's running the project. It could be with numerous partners. It could also be by yourself. And you and your research team itself. A fellowship, and that money that you get for it
It's for
almost
equipment.
entirely goes towards work on the research itself. Okay? What type of things do you think foundations will fund for a research project?
The lab equipment, the
Okay,
Personnel mainly.
personnel is the largest amount of money goes to personnel.
Okay,
It's to be able to pay students, research assistants, technicians, whatever it is that whatever type of people you need to work on this project, that's the main money goes towards that. Okay, you can also get funding for travel if that's needed for the project. I mean, in most of your projects, it's less needed for travel, but sometimes you might need to go to a site. Either it's in Israel or you might have to, you might have a collaboration with someone outside of Israel to be able to, in the Maldives, to go there on Hanukkah and check out the, you know, how many postpartum women deal with shark attacks. It's possible, yeah, definitely. What else? Any other ideas of what money from research can go towards?
Statistics, if you want to pay someone to do the statistics. for you.
Okay, that again is connected to the personnel.
Computers,
חומרה,
laptop. yeah,
hardware.
hardware. Developing, if you have to develop some hardware,
lab
some
set.
software, sorry, software.
You can also get funding to be able to pay publication fees. There are a lot of journals that want you to actually pay to get it published.
Mhm.
What else? Any other ideas? Conferences. Anything else? Michael, any other ideas?
Overheads. Which is, depending on where you are, a big chunk of your budget.
Right, okay, so you always have to take into consideration that there's the idea of overheads. In Hebrew, it's tekura, okay? No matter where you're working, someone is gonna still have to administer that grant. Okay, and the administration, you have to pay for the administration also. So every place has a different level of funding that they require in order to get it. In Israel, the average university or hospital, whatever, they take you to about 15% minimum. If the foundation is willing to give more, no one's gonna tell them that they can't take it. You know, there's a lot of times where it'll say that the foundation will say that you have a maximum of X amount. And then, so the people submitting the research think, oh, if it's maximum, so okay, I'll just write down 5%. And I'll use the rest of the money for myself. So you need to take that into consideration that that's not something that's gonna work. You know, you have to find out whoever is doing the administration, what is their minimum, and use that. For instance, I work in Bar-Ilan, and all the universities, the minimum is 15%. Okay, there are foundations that give more, and there are foundations that give less. Now, what happens when the foundation gives less? The university still needs their 15%.
So you lose part of your grant.
No, you should not take it from the grants.
You should not take it from the grant?
You're not allowed.
You're not allowed to take it from the grant. Okay.
Each foundation, we'll get into this in a
They
little
say
while.
how much
They say what, when you
So
set
have
up
to
the
find
budget,
another
you're gonna
income.
say how much goes for overhead. And if they say that we only allow 10% overhead, you can't say, oh, well, I'll still give 15%.
Okay,
Because the
so
foundation
maybe
doesn't allow it.
You have to find another income.
You have to find another way to get it. Exactly. So there are places that will not let you submit something unless you can find a way to show that you can pay that extra money.
And if you have another grant that gives more than 15, so does the administration say, okay, you gave me more this time, next time? No.
No. Again, I don't make the rules.
Yeah, no.
Just to say,
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe it's too early. I don't
No,
know.
no. So overhead, what's overhead? Overhead pays for lighting, pays for electricity, pays for water, pays for all the different things
Mhm.
that are needed in the in the offices that, most people, when you work in an office, you're not paying for your electricity, you're not paying for your phone calls, you're not paying for, someone's paying for it. And when you're doing it here in Ziv, so Ziv is paying for it unless, I don't know, maybe they are charging you for your phone calls. I don't know. What, they do?
no, there's an overhead if you apply for, like the.
Right, no, obviously, no, what I'm saying is that there are certain things that when you work in a particular place, you assume that it's free, but someone's paying for it. So the money has to come from somewhere. So what I want you to understand is that the importance of understanding that overhead is part of what's needed. It's not a way for the hospital or the university to tax you. It's not money that's going into their pockets that they're not giving out. Okay, did I explain it?
No,
or
that
you're
explains
still-
what overhead is, but it doesn't explain why this can't come from the grant or where you're supposed to take it.
Okay. All right, so I'll get to that in a little while. If you see later that I don't explain it, then we'll go into more detail about that. Okay, so that's what a grant is. Okay, then you have a fellowship. A fellowship is usually, at least from a university perspective, in the hospital it's obviously different, but a fellowship is basically a salary for a student or a postdoc, or it could be even for a researcher, so that you're getting a salary during this particular amount of time to do a specific research project. You mentioned earlier
It's to
that
do a specific research
do a
project.
specific research
So
project.
fellowship has to come with a specific project that you are,
With a proposal.
Again, when you're dealing with research, there are places where you can get a fellowship otherwise. You can apply for a fellowship in, maybe Ziv has a fellowship that they want people to apply in a particular department to be able to be there.
as
That's-
if.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly.
Okay.
But my point is that, see,
Okay.
you have to also take into consideration that my perspective on this is from a university perspective. Because that's what I've been doing for 25 years. So, I'm less familiar with how things work in the hospital or in other places. Like in the university, the only people that are allowed to apply for research grants are people who are part of the Segel Bachir from lecture and above. Okay, meaning that you already have to have a doctorate, you already have to, in most cases, have done a postdoc. And then, you have your first minui in the university until,
If you are a clinician with an MD rather than a PhD.
MD is fine.
And you have an affiliate, like a clinical appointment,
Mhm.
you're eligible to
Yeah.
apply for grants, right?
That's
So
what
we
You need
all,
to be
So you are.
We still.
no,
need to be-
מרצה, מדריך,
No, Madrid is
Marcel.
borderline.
But Marcel,
With clinician, clinical Madrid. Sometimes we can try and get it through and
but
sometimes
not
not.
say it.
Marcel for sure.
אני לא שם מדריך במחלקה, אני אחראי על הסיעוד במחלקה שלי, זה עכשיו מדריך, זה לא שם. מה זה
זה
נחשב?
לא מינוי
אם
שקיבלת.
קיבלת מינוי אקדמי בר אילן.
תלוי מה כתוב לך
אז
בזה.
תהליך,
גם
יש
מינוי,
מכתב וכתוב מינוי אקדמי.
מה הדרגה שלי זה מדריך או מרצה?
כן.
מרצה אתה.
מרצה
כן,
כנראה
אני לא מרצה.
מרצה צריך
לא, השאלה אם
לעשות-
בכלל מינוי. היית יודע. היית מקבל
איזה קורס.
אישור.
כן.
לא יודע, יכול להיות.
באמת למה סוף השנה.
So one thing to know is that the hospital is affiliated with the
Right.
faculty, you know that.
They're affiliated, of course.
Yes.
But not everyone in
Not
the
everyone, no,
faculty
you have to
is
apply.
eligible
No, correct.
to be a part.
So this is important for you guys because it means there's two ways to apply for funding. If you have a university affiliation, then you can use university services, but you can also use hospital services. So through the Mechon Mechkar, through the Amuta, through the Tagid within the hospital. If you don't have an affiliation, then you can only go through the hospital.
We always come to you, Michael, and then you help us navigate.
No, but it's important because
I'm just kidding.
some opportunities are only available through universities. for
And
example.
some
And
opportunities
some
are
are
only
only
available
available through
through
hospitals.
hospitals.
Some of those, so it changes what you can and cannot apply for.
So there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of foundations in the world that, including Israel, obviously, that want to fund research. Okay, and the trick is to find the foundation that is suitable for your particular project. Okay, because there are a lot of, is it recording? No, it's fine. There are a lot of foundations that are looking for specific topics. It could be a specific topic saying, for instance, cancer, or it could be even more specific. It could be saying, okay, we only want to look at things dealing with breast cancer, or we only want to look at things dealing with certain mutations and things like that. So it's very time consuming to try and find the right foundations for the work that you want to do. But in the end, it's worthwhile because you want to submit something to a place that has an interest in what you're doing. There are a lot of foundations that are very general, and it's great to apply to them, but it's much harder to get funded
There's a lot of people.
because there are even more people who are able to submit to it. Now, Michael said that his success rate so far is 1 in 3. That's 30%. 30% is really, really high. Okay.
It's a small sample size. It
It doesn't matter it doesn't matter the sample size. Forget about the sample size. My point is that most foundations have between a 10 and 15% success rate. Okay, obviously it all depends on what foundation you're submitting to and stuff like that. For instance, you have the ISF, which Michael submitted to, and that's something that you
Very
have to
difficult.
have. I'm sorry,
It's difficult to get an ISF.
that's not true.
It's not true.
Not true at all. The ISF has a 33% success rate.
Okay, wow.
Okay,
Where's the-
it's the Israel Science
Israeli
Foundation.
Science Foundation.
Okay,
ברשות המחקר.
This is 10 years of working and achieving only 3 years of project.
Right, it's.
So
no, but this is one foundation. I'm not talking about that. The idea also is that you don't submit just to one foundation. You can't. You have to submit to numerous, because you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You have to realize that if your success rate is not, if everyone's success rate, some people say that you have a higher success rate of winning the lottery. Okay, I don't think that's necessarily true, but because there are a lot more people buying lottery tickets, and that's more mazal than tzedakah. Because the idea of getting funding for your research is you have to prove that it's worth the foundation's while to fund your research. That you know what you're, not only do you have a good idea, but that you know what you're doing, and that you can prove that you can show all the steps that you plan on doing, that you think you're going to go in the right direction for getting this research done. Obviously, no one can know 100% that their ideas of how to get to a particular goal that you're gonna get there. Which a lot of times people can start off, they can get funded for research and start working on it, and they realize halfway through that their entire hypothesis is wrong, and that, you know, their research then gets veered off to in another direction, which is fine, because the foundations understand that. You know, the foundation is not looking at the end when after you finish your funding, they're not gonna look at it and say, oh, did you do exactly what it is that you said you're gonna do? It's, did you start off and what was the progress? But in the end, did you achieve something? If you sat down and did nothing, they're not gonna be happy, obviously. Because you have to, through they're depending on the foundation, you have to also explain what you did and what you do with all the money. Yeah, so, you know, you don't want to reach a point where they're gonna say, okay, well, give us back the money that we gave you, which happens, thankfully not too much, but it does happen. Because they, in the end, they want the research to be done. They want research to be done, doesn't specific, they hope it's the project that you said that you're gonna get funded for. Okay, so I mentioned that there are thousands and thousands of foundations. And each of these foundations has different rules. There's no set rules where I can give you a list and say, okay, these are the 10 things that you need to do in order to submit the best proposal to X foundation. Every one of them is individual. Everyone does that. They have their different priorities. Some of them, it's more important this aspect, and some of them are more important that aspect. And so the most important thing is once you figure out what foundation you want to submit the proposal to, is take the time and read their instructions. And if you're doing it via Ziv, if you're doing it through us, speak to us also to get tips on specifically that particular foundation, to see what it is that they're looking for and what is important. Because most of these foundations get thousands upon, they get more than 1,000 proposals, and you don't realize how happy they are when things aren't filled out properly, and they can just say, okay, we don't have to worry about this one.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
sorry to announce you.
No, it's not
We
even
didn't
sorry.
write your
It's
name.
not even sorry.
Not-
They don't even say sorry. Okay, as an example, I mean, that's what my job and my staff, that's our job, to make sure that the proposal gets in the door at the foundation and doesn't get rejected for technical reasons. Okay. Now that it's online, it makes things a little bit easier, but it also makes things harder. Okay, it makes it easier because it's not, you're generally not gonna forget to fill in something. Because if you have to fill in a particular field, so it's not gonna let you continue if you don't fill it in. But on the other hand, they also have the technology to check things, to make sure that you do things according to what they're telling you that you need to do. If they say that you're allowed 10 pages, that's 10 pages. It's not 10 pages and 2 lines and whatever. And then they'll also tell you what font. And you need to make sure that if they say, okay, we're approving 11 font, you can't do it in 10.72. There are technological ways for them to actually check these things. I mean, you see it with the ISF, how the system yells at you that it's wrong.
Yeah.
Even though it's sometimes right. There are a lot of false positives there also. And so,
On the technical issues,
yes.
the
Like
system alerts.
for example,
No, certain foundation, depends on the foundation.
if the ISF tells you you have to describe your project in 6 pages, and you want to be smart and say, you know what, I'm going to reuse a very small font so I can cram a lot,
Or I'm gonna
6
make the margins smaller.
and then you submit it, and they will say, no, the font size is
system.
too small. You reduce the margin, like you can't.
The system actually sees it. Okay,
But in a sense, it's better because as Robert is saying, the worst thing you want to do, the worst thing is not reading properly, submitting, and then the foundation or whoever grants not even looking at your things because they say, you know what, you didn't bother to actually read the instructions properly. It's the same with submitting papers. You know, every journal has a slightly different, we want to use that font, the Lancet wants a dot instead of a comma, these kind of stupid things. And if you don't do it, they're not even going to bother looking at your paper. So I think read the instructions.
Yeah,
It's really
it's the most
important.
important thing,
But it is really hard.
and
really
you'd be
confusing.
surprised how many times we send things back to the researchers because we know that they didn't read the instructions.
What
Okay.
proportion would you say you get that are actually like they actually read everything and everything is
How many proposals, what percentage of proposals come to us and they're perfect?
yeah.
0.00.
Not the content,
It's
but the
rare.
actual.
It's
rare.
very, very rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare that there are no comments whatsoever.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and one of the problems also is that every revision, we have to check again. Because something might change or something might be switched, you might, when you've written your proposal, you've done one thing, and then when you're making changes, you say, oh, I wanted to change this and that and the other thing, and then when it comes back to us, it's different, so we need to check it again. Okay, I got in touch with Michael when he was sitting in an airport after he thought everything was submitted, because he had forgotten something. I'm trying to remember what it was, I don't even remember what it was that you needed to add. It was in
It
the
was
letter.
the point by points because they didn't actually say that they wanted point. This is the other thing that the
Ah.
instructions are not always that clear, which is a different.
Okay, but there,
Yeah.
that's one of the advantages of working with somebody who has experience. Whether it's with that specific foundation or with other foundations, that, there's the, Torah b'chtav and Torah b'alpeh. So there's certain things that you just have to understand and know.
In the hospital, that level of service doesn't exist, so you have to do that work. I mean, there are people who can help, but not people whose job is to check that you are compliant. So you actually need to spend a lot of time, which is why, deciding to apply the day before the
Or
deadline
you
is
can
not a
do
good
a
idea.
research with someone from the
Of course, of
university,
course,
and
of
then
course,
if you
of
have a
course.
collaboration.
But that's not so clear cut, because it's your idea, you still wanna get credit for it. If you do collaboration, if you're not affiliated, but someone else is, so only their name appears on it, your name appears inside, but not as one of the
Okay.
people submitting it.
The grant,
But,
in the
There's-
research, you can be first or last, and then
yeah,
you can.
when
but
you're talking about
the
the,
grant,
when you're talking
grant
about
also
the,
is important.
It's
For your
important
CV.
when you want to go for like.
right, because you can't put it on your
minority-
CV if you're not
Right.
listed as one of the principal investigators. If you're listed as part of the Koch Adam, okay, there's an advantage that you can actually get salary from it. Because the researchers
Right.
are generally not allowed to get salary. There are foundations that allow it, but most foundations do not allow the researcher to get funded from it. So if you're not someone who's allowed to be a principal investigator, then you can actually get funding, which is obviously helpful,
Yes.
to add it to your salary beyond what you need to do the research itself. I mean, these are all little things that most people don't even think about and don't even know that they exist. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And so what I was mentioning about fellowships. So a fellowship in general is to pay a student or a postdoc. Usually they get an X amount of sum to do a project that they're already doing. Okay, someone who's doing their master's thesis or their PhD thesis, or someone who's doing a postdoc. So, what the university is already giving them the opportunity to do this. But what they need is, they need some sort of salary while they're working. So the fellowship gives them that salary during the time that they need to do the research. Okay, so in Israel, a lot of the Misradim Mimshala, they actually are willing to fund a lot more fellowships for that reason. Because I know in Bar Ilan, there's certain, I'm assuming also in the medical school, that most students don't even have to pay to be in there. If you're accepted, you actually get some sort of,
You get a milga.
you get a milga. What's a milga? Fellowship.
In the advanced degrees. Not in the first
Advanced
degree.
advanced degree.
No,
advanced
but,
degrees.
but very few people do research in a BA or a BS. It's only when you get to the master's level are people doing research. it's rare.
Yeah, okay.
This could be important because, you know, one of the biggest challenges in the hospital is that everyone here is, you know, has a full-time clinical job. So mostly it's, what we're trying to do is we're trying to integrate research into clinical activities, but what we run, you know, is a good example. I mean, you can want to run you can have ambition and a great plan, but suddenly there's an emergency operation that you have to do, and it's, you know, that has to take priority. So for those who are thinking about, you know, bigger and longer term research projects, like say, for example, you want to build a research program in oncology, you're not going to have the time to run it yourself. And then if you manage to write a fellowship, then you can recruit, because the hospital will not give you a budget to just have someone do research full time. But with a fellowship, that's what you can have. And you can basically have a research fellow within your department that would, you know, do the day-to-day, and then you work on this is not a model that is that common here, but in larger university hospitals it's very common. Like, you know, if you like, you know, when I used to work in the Royal Free in London or University College London, almost every department has one or several research fellows whose sole job is to do research around the clinical activities. We can get, you know, this is an aspiration for us, but it's a model that is feasible.
And
It's time limited. Is it?
the project, wait,
No,
the
fellowship, I thought it's only time limited.
It is time limited.
time limited, it's usually, it's given
Person
for,
limited and time limited.
what's the first thing you said?
It's
Personally.
personal.
Yeah, it's for the specific.
So it's for Noam for 2 years.
Yes. Exactly. And
But paying somebody's salary for 2 years is pretty good.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. But it's not.
It's common in
not-
Israel?
It's not common here.
How long it's happened? I don't know.
In
I think
hospitals.
it is, yeah. I think it is.
Yes.
In the large hospitals, yeah.
רמב"ם, תל השומר.
So what type
Definitely,
of people do this?
בריסרצ' פלו?
No, generally it will be like
Not in the
postdocs,
clinical
for
department.
example. They're not necessarily, as you know, I mean, from my experience in hospitals, it's either clinicians who want to become academic clinicians, or people who are not clinicians who are career researchers. You know, after their PhD, like a 2-year, you know, this is what people look for, the kind of position people look for. So, you know, someone who's done, I don't know, a PhD in oncology in a lab but wants to then apply that to clinical oncology, will go and look for a hospital fellowship, or, you know, it exists in every single, I mean, I would say some clinical areas it's more common than others, but it exists in every field of clinical medicine.
right, and the advantage also is if you have a fellowship to pay for someone, it takes time until you can actually get your funding for the research. So what you can sometimes start the research, but you know, you have much more limited funds. So at the beginning, you want someone who can run it and make sure that things are working while you're working on writing up the proposal and then submitting it. Most foundations take anywhere between 6 months to a year for you to start to get your funding. Okay, usually, I mean, again, we'll use the ISF as an example. The deadline is the beginning of November. They give answers in July.
Yeah, 9 months, 7 months.
8
months.
8 months,
Yeah.
and then the funding begins on October 1st. So it takes almost a year to start. No, you'll know because they give you 3 months to start preparing.
No, I mean, to get 7 months to get the refusal.
No.
Rejection, yeah.
Here, I'll, there's something that I tell every researcher.
Okay.
When you submit a proposal, you're submitting you're submitting the best proposal that you've ever written, and you're gonna get funded. That's what you have to have in mind when you're writing your proposal. Because if you say to yourself that it's gonna take 7 months or 8 months until I get my rejection, you're not gonna write as hard when you're submitting it. No, it's true. So
She's a psychiatrist in the room.
It's not true?
It is.
Okay. If you, if
No, you
you're,
give up, if you think I'm gonna work hard.
if you think I'm gonna
you're
work
gonna
hard
get
and
a
not get anything
rejection,
from it,
So you always have better things to do than invest your time in something you feel you're gonna fail.
exactly.
So you have to feel like, okay, I'm doing it.
Exactly.
And that brings out the best in you.
Completely. Yes, no.
How can we get the information of which of the fellowship grants has a higher success rate?
Every foundation on their website
It
has, they usually have either a list of how many people submitted and how many people and
Oh, really?
who got it.
Okay.
Okay,
But that's
again,
last year. If you-
some of them do, some of them you can go back years.
Yeah,
and
but
see,
if last
and
year
some of
they
them-
had
and
a high
most-
succession rate, then this year more people will apply, then maybe it will go down. Right?
Most foundations try to keep the same level of success rate,
Okay,
okay? Because what that means is you're not necessarily gonna also get all the money that you're asking for. You know, you can ask for a specific sum and then they cut it because they wanna be able to fund more projects.
more projects, and then
Because
you
because it's in the foundation's interest to keep the success level at a steady pace the entire time. Okay, the ISF for
Many years.
30 years
Yeah.
has been able to keep the success rate at 33%. There are a lot more projects that are submitted today than there were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. But they still are able to keep, and it's not because they have more money, it's because what they do is
they give less.
they give less money. The Israel Science Foundation, okay? The one thing that with the ISF is less relevant for most of you anyway, because the ISF only funds basic research. It doesn't fund clinical
Norms
research.
project is kind of basic.
Okay, no, exactly, but, and they added a new criteria this year that you actually have to explain why this is basic research, because there are a lot of projects that are known as translational research.
Mm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Where it's something that's really on the borderline and, you know, they don't want that, because their mandate is to fund basic research. So you have to be very careful about that, because there are projects that get rejected because of that. And again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. The most important thing is that you want to get, you want to get your proposal reviewed. And if you don't get to that review stage, then, you know,
But
then you've wasted your time.
but having a project like basic research doesn't necessarily mean looking at cells under a microscope.
No,
right?
no.
So a clinical project could be considered basic research. You know, like something like building a predictive tool for, I mean, it depends how you frame it.
Exactly. The whole, the key is always phrasing things properly and explaining it as well as possible. You know, you need to make sure that the foundation understands what it is that you want to do. And what's more important is that they understand that you know what you want to do. Because if you write things too much in general, then you know, most foundations have it's peer review. So it's gonna go to other people in your field who are gonna look at it and they're gonna say, this is too general, does not specifically explain it. But on the other hand, if you get too specific, then, you know, you have to find the fine line between the two. Because you want to also be able to relate to other people, you want people to be able to relate to it. Because someone else in your field who's gonna read it, they're not gonna be in your specific niche of your research. They're supposed to know in general what it is that you know, they're supposed to be familiar with that type of research. But if you're talking too specific, then they're gonna be like, well, I'm more interested in this type of research. You know, which is what happens quite often, that you want,
Or you
because
or you find that the reviewers actually don't understand your proposal.
Yeah.
And then the comments are.
right, and that's a problem also, because you generally cannot can't Appeal, right? You generally cannot appeal, you can't appeal. Some foundations allow you to resubmit a year later, but then, again, you're talking 2 years to be funded, as opposed to 1 year. You know, so it makes things a lot more difficult from that perspective. Okay, so most foundations, the general structure of what they're looking for with a proposal, and again, every foundation is different, but they almost always want an abstract. Okay, they're gonna want keywords which are used to help them find people in the particular field, both for their review boards, because they're generally 2 review boards. There's the board of people who sit and make the final decision, and then there's the peer review that it goes to other people in your field. Okay, so some foundations, the first board is also people in your field, some of them they're not. Okay, some of them will only rely on what they get from the peer review, and some of them understand well enough that they can read the peer review and know whether this particular person understood or didn't understand, and they also are allowed to give their input into the project also. Okay. So, I mean, actually, I'll explain to you a little bit about the process in most foundations. Okay, you submit your proposal and you have to submit it to them by a particular day. And this goes back to what we said about reading instructions. If they tell you that you need to submit it by a particular day at a particular time,
Do it.
no.
Before.
Submit it,
Before.
put in your mind that the deadline is at least a week beforehand. Okay, and it doesn't matter if you're doing it through Bar-Ilan or through Ziv or whatever, you want to have the extra time. Everyone's busy. We know, you know, we're familiar that everyone is doing a lot of work and not just this, and people prioritize what they want to do, and they say, oh, we have a deadline on December 6th, so I'll work on something else and then I'll get to that by December 6th. But if you tell yourself beforehand that my deadline is not December 6th, my deadline is the 30th of November.
Easier said than done. I always
Okay,
say,
you're right.
I'm
you're
gonna
right.
tell myself it's a week before, but then I always get to the last
Okay.
minute. To the
Fine.
Maldives.
No, but if you're told that
No, I
if you
mean,
don't
it's-
submit it
I
a
mean,
week before, that it's not gonna be,
Uh,
if you're told that if you don't submit it a week before, that no one's gonna take care of it, okay, then what are you gonna do? I can give you an example from this week. There was a researcher who needed to submit a very, very large research proposal to us on Monday. And the deadline was, he needed to get it done by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He missed the deadline. He said it was the best proposal he's ever written in his life. And he said if he had just another 2 hours, he would have gotten it done. Okay? And in the end, we had to notify the foundation that he's not submitting.
It's once a year, usually.
Yes. Again, it depends on the foundation, but in general, it is. There are foundations that have twice a year, some have 3 times a year, it depends. But most foundations have 1 time a year, because when in a little while, I'll explain the whole process. And you'll see that it's a lot of work on their part also, that in most cases, it's not worth their while to do it numerous times. Because it takes them so long anyway. Okay, so. Right, so make sure that you get it in on time. Because just because the deadline is a particular time, doesn't, if you've done something that needs to be fixed, you need to also have time to fix it. And you also have to remember that you're not the only person submitting. So if you're doing it through an office, whether it's through Ziv or through us or whatever. So you can't assume that you're the only person that they're gonna have to deal with on that particular day. And you know, everyone wants their proposal to be looked over properly. But if you send it in the last minute, then, you know, then we have less time to look it over, and then there's less time for you to do corrections. And there have been cases where people didn't have enough time to make their corrections. Because at least my philosophy is, I'd rather that someone doesn't submit something than submit something that's gonna get rejected. Because, you know, there's no reason to submit something in a way that the foundation already states before and that they don't want, if it can be avoided in the first place.
If you submit in advance, do most foundations allow corrections? Or like if you submit and there's still time to the deadline, can you say, I just want to change something, is it okay to?
Depends on the foundation. Most foundations do not. Once it's submitted, it's submitted. But there's a difference between submitting it to the administration or submitting it to the foundation.
Of course.
Who do people at Ziv submit to? Is there any?
Well, it depends. So there really isn't there isn't a process, there isn't a quality assurance process like there is in the university, which is why if you have the choice, I would really strongly recommend that you go through the university. What you do have here is you have fundraising and you have the Friends of Ziv Association, and they can help with fundraising and with writing applications. So if you write a draft, they will comment on it and look at it and help you also write some of the sections, etc.
But that's mostly for donations, isn't it?
Not only, it's for both.
They deal also with competitive.
They've
Competitive grants?
mainly dealt with donations, but they can help with applications. It's not necessarily that they have the same experience, it's just another pair of eyes.
Right.
And I think one of the bigger challenges here is time, because it is very time consuming to write. That's why also, if you have, I mean, if you have people in your team who are dedicated to research, then part of their time can be spent on looking for the right opportunities and writing, because it's really, I'm thinking of the ISF. I mean, I don't know how many hours it takes, but it takes a lot of hours.
Yeah, this researcher who missed the deadline the other day, he told us in July that he was submitting. So it wasn't as if he just found out the day before, but he's busy with other things and he kept pushing out. And he missed it. And
Which
it's heartbreaking. It really is. For him, it's probably even more heartbreaking than it is for me, but it's still heartbreaking for me to hear that's what happened. Because I couldn't help him. If he would have submitted it to me a week before and said, I still need a few hours, great, take a few hours. But the foundation, there's a famous saying, it's the golden rule. He who holds the gold makes the rules. Okay, so if the foundation says this is their deadline, that's it. There's nothing that we can do about that. Even now that we're dealing with Corona, they're not going to say, oh, someone last year missed a deadline for registration, which takes 2 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah.
Doesn't even take 5 minutes. It takes 2 minutes, because all you do is basically put your name in there. Okay, they missed it, and what was her excuse? I was in Bidud. And I said, you're in Bidud. You don't
What
have
else do you have to
to
do? What else do you have to
The
do?
computer was in the other room. I was in Bidud.
No, it drove me nuts. This year she had another excuse why she missed it. It's chronic with certain people.
If you are part of the Segel, you get emails about opportunities
Yes.
for grants.
Mhm.
I don't know who you get them. Dana, you get them, right?
What?
The emails from Bar Ilan saying there's an opportunity,
I don't see any emails from Bar Ilan. Because I don't get, you have the email of Bar Ilan.
Yeah.
And it's tons of emails and tons of, like, you have 60 emails per hour, including where do you pray and what do you do, and you can't
So-
find anything in there.
I don't get that many emails from.
I get
about-
tons of
about
emails.
When
we need to look because
Tons of
because
emails,
a
I
lot
don't know, they have like spread,
who are you getting them
I
from?
don't know.
a lot of the opportunities.
So I don't get into the,
Not for me.
that's a big problem we have,
Well,
because we are not in campus, and a lot of stuff that gets in the mail
But you can
is
get-
not relevant to us,
true.
and you can't see the trees within the forest, it's like.
But you can see it comes from different people. So if it comes from the research
I was talking
authorities,
to Dan Chinanzon about it, and he said, why don't you get all your Bar Ilan emails to your
Yes.
Ziv mail?
That's
So
what
I can't work, I
No,
can't
but
see 100
You
mails a
can
day.
set it up that emails from certain people go into a
Yeah.
certain folder. And then
so
you
for
don't
example,
see them.
because I find personally one of the hardest, and hopefully you're going to talk about this, is how to because you say there are thousands of foundations, but actually finding which ones are relevant, which one we're eligible for.
No, we only send things out that are eligible.
I know, but if you don't get if you don't get that, and you have to do the search yourself, it's a lot of work. So if you have the chance of someone actually fishing out the opportunities for you, you need to take it, and you need to get
Maybe I'll
the.
ask them to help me clear my mailbox, because it's not only my problem.
No, but for example,
No,
you
not
can get
clear my mailbox, like
specifically.
say what Neta said, don't get mail from this person. Yeah, I cannot see that, for
So-
me, that's stressful, because
Do
maybe
you get
there is
emails from us?
something important.
14,000 emails.
But
That's
from
the
the,
thing,
not
New
really.
City
Wait, but you're getting from the
sends
research
us
already?
10
No,
mails per day.
yes, but from the you can just choose to get the ones from the research authority. Not the ones that tell you that there is a Hanukkah party in Ramat Gan, but the ones that tell you there's an
Yeah,
opportunity.
that's what I need them to help me do, like clear
So we need to
the
do
people
that.
I get mails from, but that's the problem with the Barilan mails.
I'm not connected to that.
And we are off campus, like it's not relevant to
So,
us at all.
She's number one,
For those who are not,
1,000.
so
20,000.
for those who are Barilan staff, you do get the emails. You just need to look in your emails or forward the right emails. For those who are not yet, can you give some tips on how to?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I mentioned that you generally need to have keywords, you need to have an abstract, which is usually up to 1 page. But again, everything I'm saying has a little asterisk next to it that is possible the foundation will request something different. Sometimes it's 250 words, sometimes it's 250 letters or characters. Everyone, they've completely asked for different things. Then you have the proposal itself. Okay. The proposal itself is generally broken up into 4 sections. Okay. The first section is explaining the history of this particular idea. You cite the literature, you mentioned, who's done things that are similar, and basically what has brought you to this particular point. Okay. The second part is the description of what it is that you want to do. Okay. Again, every foundation has a different limit of how many pages they want, or how much space you have to write in each of these different sections. They might call it something slightly different also. The detailed description, that's where you're going to explain to them what you want to do and why it's so important that this research gets done and gets funded eventually. Okay, the third aspect that you need to take into account is what's known as pitfalls and possible problems. You need to already explain to them that what possible problems you might have along the way while doing this research, which helps the reviewers understand that you have an understanding of what it is that you're doing. Okay, you want to go do something, but that it's possible that you're going to have a problem in this point and that point in this, and what are your possible solutions to get around that?
Risks.
Okay, exactly. Research is risky. There's no question about that. And you need to show that this isn't a shot in the dark. This is something that you have somewhat of a plan of what it is that you want to do. And if you actually hit one of these problems, how are you going to get around it? Okay. And then the final section is basically bibliography. Okay, you need to always make sure that everything is cited. Okay, and the main reason you do this, and you're gonna laugh at this, but the main reason is because you don't want it to get to a reviewer who you didn't cite if he's in that field. Okay, you laugh, but it happens. I've seen many
Happened to
proposals.
me in the Avodat Gmar in med school,
Okay,
that they didn't cite the one that reviewed and he failed.
there you go.
And he had his paper in the refuah, I did it in,
It's a good
it was
ego-centric.
1995. There was no PubMed. We were going to the library, they would get this thing, and the refuah wasn't there. And the reviewer, he had a paper in Refuah, and he said, how didn't you, and he failed me.
Yeah.
No, I went there, I
My
talked to him,
paper,
I got
you know.
that.
Sorry, I only used it.
No, it's לא, זה היה ביקורת.
הוא היה מפורסם.
בסדר? לא אקסס.
So,
הוא היה קרדיולוג לילדים, נכון?
לא,
הוא היה-
לא.
לא החלטתי נכון. לא מבינים.
so, but I've seen many proposals rejected over the years where I've seen the researchers' comments, and that comes up quite often, that you can tell by the way that the comments are written, that, you know, why did you say this person, why did you say that person, and you know that it's one of those people. Okay, and because there's always politics.
Right.
And the important thing is that sometimes you'll get answers like that for things that aren't even relevant. Because the person wants you to know that you should know who they are. But they might not even be specifically in your field. But you need to be as thorough as possible, especially now that you have PubMed, it's easier. It's not, nothing's 100%, but the idea is to make sure that you have as many things. Sometimes it's better to cite something that you don't even completely reference, that you might allude to, so that it's there. I mean, one of the things that I keep using the ISF as an example because that's the biggest foundation in Israel, and most universities and hospitals, the most amount of proposals go to that foundation. Go to the ISF. Okay.
Really?
Yes.
It's a good brand.
There is no foundation that gets more proposals from Israeli institutions than
Than
the
the
ISF. What were you thinking?
No, does it also give the largest amount of grants per grant?
But a lot of
Israeli,
American brands you can.
Israeli speaking.
Israel, yes. Yeah, you might have specific programs that'll give more, but in
But
general,
general-
they give the largest. Because one of the things about ISF is that it's not, there's no specific field. You can submit in any field. Because of their mandate is that they want to fund research in every single field that they have in Israel, which is great. Because that means people who are in the humanities can apply. They're not going to need the same amount of funds as someone in medicine. But, you know, they can still get funding for that.
For
also.
ISF, there's no limit, right? I mean, it doesn't, they give you the average size of the grant, but when you apply for a grant, it doesn't tell you, you
No.
can only apply for,
No, there's no limit, but you have to use common sense.
yeah.
You know, if you ask for 2 million shekels a year, they're it's gonna get rejected in the end because they're gonna say you can't do the research. Because,
No, but it's actually a challenge because in Israel, they really aren't, unless you go to the binational or international, there aren't foundations like NIH or NIHR that, you know, for some areas of clinical research or biomedical research, you need much larger budgets.
okay, but you can, Israelis can submit to NIH and even win NIH.
If they have an American partner.
Of course not. You need an American partner. I guess now we have something to talk about.
They give also salaries for fellowship, not only grants. If I want to, like, for example, I want after the residence, after like Mahut, I want to travel to Ichilov, do a fellowship there, to study a specific field in NT and do a research there. So they can give me salary for that, for example.
There are places that you can get funding for that, yes. You can possibly get it from Echolov, or there are external places that would also be willing to do it, but it would be for a specific project that you were planning on going to do.
But generally, you wouldn't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the process would be like, say, for example, there is one person that you really want to work with and you have an idea, like you know, a professor or, then you would.
So he applies basically with you.
So
I mean,
you contact him and you say, you know, I have this groundbreaking idea and I want to work with you. because for some of these grants, like for example, for, like you were saying, you need a certain academic status
Yeah.
or status to be able to apply. But generally, the person applying is not the person doing the day-to-day, I mean, it can
Yeah,
happen,
of
but
course,
it's
right.
rare.
Manager or something.
Right. Right, but also you need to make sure that you have a place beforehand. Because if you're submitting for fellowships to anywhere, you have to tell them, you generally have to give them a letter from the place that has accepted you. You can't say, okay, well, when I get funding, I'll find a
No,
place
of
to go.
course, of course.
You know, that-
Then what do you do?
That's the-
Find him a fellowship. You gotta find him a fellowship. Okay, so after the bibliography, you generally have to give also a timetable. Okay, you have to explain how long you feel that this is gonna take you to do the research. And what are the various stages and how long each stage will take. Okay,
Until publication or just the research itself?
for the research. Most foundations do not fund the publication. They want the end product to be the publication, but they want to fund the research aspect of it.
Application, the small money, like, I think, no? The applications, it's the fees, like, you're talking about the fees of application,
Yeah.
no?
No, but you can include, you can
No, but they're-
include,
No, but most times when you're working on a research project, you're not looking just to give one publication at the end. You know, throughout the course of the project, most research projects are 3 to 4 years. Okay, if not longer. Sometimes you have 5-year projects and rare occasions even more than that. But it's also rare to have smaller projects. You know, for instance, anything less than 2 years, most foundations don't even want to look at it because they want to see something that's going to make a change. But again, there are foundations that are for fellowships and things like that are specifically looking for things for 1 year. Or
but if you're writing a 3-year project and you have to submit a timeline, you can include, I mean, part of it can be writing time.
part of it can be writing time, but we always suggest to minimize how much
Right.
you're gonna say that you're gonna be sitting and writing. Because most foundations are gonna say, oh, well, if you're gonna spend 6 months writing, so we don't have to pay you for that. We wanna pay you to do the research. So you want to have the, you want them to fund that time. Because again, most of the funding is going to go for you to be paying your personnel. So you still want to have your research assistant when you're sitting and writing.
In the perspectives of the foundation, is the end stage goal of them is also to me to have a publication? Or
Yes.
Yes.
That's the end goal, but they don't want to fund, they want to fund you to do the research so that you can eventually publish.
And if you have a project with like 4 sub studies, then you can take time to write while you start
Yeah.
with the next one. So at the
Right.
same time,
So if you're working on a 3-year project, it's not like you publish nothing until the last 2 months and then you spend 2 months writing full time. It's kind of,
Right, because it's something that's, you know, complicated, the way that it all works. So with the timetable, what's important, again, it goes back to what I said earlier, is to show the reviewers that you know what process you need to get through in order to do this project. Nobody is going to call you up and say, okay, you wrote on your timetable that starting July 1st, you're gonna be starting the second aspect of the thing. Have you started it? No one's gonna call you and ask you that, so you don't have to worry about that. The idea is to show that you know the various stages that are needed in order to do this project.
don't they
And-
ask for a progress report sometimes?
Yes, of course. Of course. They want to make sure, they don't want to make sure that you started stage 2, but they want to make
Yeah.
sure that you're doing something.
do they actually look at this carefully? And because, you know,
Most foundations take your progress report and put it in the.
no, I mean, the timeline, do they look, you know, when they, because here we're not about, we're talking about getting the grant, not what you do once you get it, but do you need to demonstrate, because, you know, what I would think is, yeah, they're definitely not going to look, oh, you know, oh, he's taking 1 week too long for this particular part, so we're going to reject it. Do they check whether it's actually realistic?
No,
to-
but
to gauge
because
whether-
the peer review aspect of it
Right.
is the other people in your field will look at it and say, Why do they need 2 years to do this particular thing? This takes 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, that's the idea, to show that you have a realistic view of your timetable. Okay, because it once again shows them that you're a professional and you know what it is that you want to do and you know how you're gonna do it. Okay, so the foundation itself is not gonna look at it, because the foundation, most people who are sitting on the boards of the foundation aren't gonna completely understand
Yeah.
how much time you need to do this particular aspect of your study. It doesn't matter. That's why they rely on the peer review process to get that feedback. Okay, which sometimes you can ask for a 4-year project and you'll get funded for 3 years. Because the reviewers' comments will be that, oh, well, you know, they can do this in 3 years. It'll never happen, I can guarantee you, it'll never happen the other way. Okay,
I'm gonna give you more money.
it's never, I've never seen a case where someone asked for 3 years and they got back and said, well, you asked for 3 years, but we decided to fund you for 4.
And sometimes they get rejected because it's too ambitious and there's no way you can make it in time.
That happens also, but that's why you need to show that you can do that. Okay, and that's why it's also always preferable to ask for a little bit longer of a project than you really need. You can pad it a little bit, you know, but within reason. You know, don't write, like I said earlier, something that takes 6 months, don't write it's gonna take you 2 years. Because that'll be too easy for them to notice. Okay, the next thing that they ask for in most applications is the budget. Is there a specific lecture about budgets or?
No.
Okay.
It's part of it.
Oh, so the budget, obviously, this is a very important aspect because you want to be able to do the project. And without, I mean, that's why you're doing this, to get the funding. So if you don't specify properly what it is that you need and how much you need for it, then they're also gonna reject it, and you don't want that. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, the main amount of money in most grants goes towards the personnel. Okay, so you need to think about when you're writing up your project, you have to think about, okay, how many people do you need to help you to work on this project? Do you need 1 research assistant? Do you need 2? Do you need 10? You know, and you need to specifically explain what it is that you want each of them to do. Okay, and is it something that they can do concurrently, or is it something that in the first year you have 1 research assistant doing one thing, and the second year you have a different research assistant doing something else? You know, you need to take that into consideration also. It doesn't need to be the same person throughout the entire project. It could be, depends on your needs in your particular project. Okay, in general, when you're most foundations ask you to write in the name of the person that you want to fund. I recommend that you never write a name in there. Never. You write to be named, to be determined, or whatever.
Even though they ask you for a specific thing?
Yes. Under name, you write to be determined. Unnamed.
Okay.
Only
Because-
the reason for rejection.
It's not a question of reason for rejection. It's to keep from getting a lawsuit.
When you say the name and then they go abroad and you have to take someone else and.
Yeah,
you don't believe
Happens
it.
all the time.
Or worse, when you say a name and then through the course of the year,
Yeah.
something happens and you decide that you don't want to use that person anymore. And then you hire someone else. I've seen lawsuits from this, where someone said, but you submitted a proposal and you said that you wrote that it was that I'm doing this project.
But also
It's not
often
worth
you
it.
don't know, because
Quite often, that's
I
correct.
mean, in my situation, you know, say for example, you have a great, amazing idea for a research program that hasn't started because you don't have the money. You know that you will need 2 people to help you, but you can only hire them if you get the budget. So you actually have no idea who that might be.
Right.
But also sometimes the postdoc gets to write the proposal and then they want their name on it because they've been working on it
Correct.
for.
Again, there sometimes you might want to do that. That's it depends on whose idea it is also. If it's the postdoc's idea, then it's a little bit of a problem to tell them, okay, we're not gonna put your name in there. You know, you need to take that into consideration also.
But this is because at the moment, this is a little bit like, this is a high level of research that most of
Yeah,
us are doing, but it's important to know that it's not out of reach, because if you have a good, this is why I always encourage people to apply for grants, even though, you know, because often I think one of the mistakes is the wrong word, but false assumptions that clinicians make, especially in a hospital that is not fully a university hospital, is that if you have an idea, you have to do it yourself. And it's not the case, you know, especially if you're head of department, or even if you're not a head of department. That's the whole point of applying for grants. You get them because you know, if you go to the management of the hospital and say, you know, I need to hire 2 people to do this, they will say, well, no, most likely, at least here, at least for now. But if you get the money, if you come to them and
To
say,
get the
look, I
money, you
have the
can have
budget.
someone being every evening in the shifts when you're not there and giving the.
That is another thing that you
questionnaires.
can get, but getting money to backfill through a, that's also, I guess,
Yeah.
it's possible as well.
Yeah,
You can get.
you need to collaborate with the university, right?
What you need,
And put a
yeah,
name of someone who's published a lot as the PI,
well, let's,
maybe.
we can talk about that.
but then you also run into problems that if you're putting, the person whose
But he
name
can't
is
apply
there,
Twice.
Yeah,
no, but the person
Yeah.
whose name is there ultimately gets all the credit.
That's okay, but there's a vicious cycle because if you don't publish enough, you don't have a chance to get
Of
the
course,
grant.
of course.
So sometimes you need that beginning to collaborate with someone. You don't put the grant on your CV, but you have the research on your CV.
Right,
And then after doing that,
correct.
you get some funds, so you have someone helping you do the research. Then you have research, and then you can apply to grant yourself, and you
Yeah.
study the process on the way.
Yeah, but.
So for me,
But there's a big
it's not
drawback to that too, because if someone else is theoretically in charge, you need to make sure that they're not gonna change what it is that you wanna do.
Yeah, okay, you need to find
That's,
someone
Right,
that you wanna work
you need to find someone who
with,
doesn't care,
that you
that you
actually
put their name
wanna,
on it, that's what you.
either doesn't care or is interested in the same things you're interested in.
Right.
but it's a challenge, it's, you know, because in some places, there is this culture of people using their seniority to get a lot of credit, but actually have no intention of doing anything.
Right.
But also not interested in helping more junior researchers to progress. They just want the credits and not do any work.
Right, I mean, I don't know how it works in the hospital, but I know in the university, if someone wins a grant, they actually get a bonus to their salary. So if you're letting someone else be a part of it, you know, that's an incentive for them, that's the, you know, the carrot and the stick.
That's why we
You know,
need the
that-
help from Bar-Ilan University, that's the help we need, because sometimes you need to go through that.
But if you're on Minui, then you can get that.
Yeah.
My advice.
Even if I have a Minui, if I apply for a grant today, I don't have enough research on my background
Application.
to get the research.
That's
So-
not true though, it depends on where you're submitting
Okay,
and what you're doing.
But I
There
think if
are-
I see
there
how
are
it
things
happens
open
in the-
for
Early,
younger
like,
when I
research.
was in Berkeley, or I see my husband who is a basic researcher. So they have these groups of people. So first you have someone that applies the grant and you just help him write, blah, blah, blah. Then you have your name as first author or last author. And then you have enough research and enough experience to apply for a grant yourself. That's for me how things should be. It's not always like that because of politics, you need to find good people, but
Exactly.
I feel, and that's, I'm just saying, and I don't know how to transfer it to the people in the faculty, but we as people that work hard on the field, that's the help we need from Bar-Ilan University
So
to go through that process and to be able to be more, learn and be more independent. This is part of it, okay? This is part of it. But we do need, I don't know which researchers are in the faculty that can help me with my research. I can apply for a grant with them to begin with, and then I can be more independent. I'm thinking now about Sivan Shofar, for instance.
I was just about to
She's
say
dealing a
Sivan.
lot with
I was just about
public
to
health.
say Sivan.
Like she can be someone, for instance, like she's doing in my research. No one can find someone else, but you don't know who is there and what they're doing.
So
Maybe we
it-
should organize
yeah. Like
Not only
matching-
us, also people that are not here, like if I could apply for a grant for my project with Sivan, let's say, she's very experienced, she has a lot of background, And then the first one, she's on the grant. But I have someone giving the questionnaires in the evening, and I don't need to ask the nurses that are very busy. So I can get my research
I think
going.
it's
I can have my
completely
paper that is first or last. Okay, and then in few years, I can be the one
possible.
helping others getting.
The other possibility is also to do collaborations with, there are, I mean, we do it. If you're doing, for example, you want to do a emergency medicine project, is to reach out to
Right, other people.
larger hospitals that are also
Right.
and offer collaboration. What I find, nothing to do with grant writing, but the important thing, because I've seen like almost physical fights, is to agree on who gets what in terms of credits,
Right.
list of authorship,
Not only
money,
to agree,
etc.
but to have it in writing.
You have to have it right. And that's fine. And I think you're right. I think in the beginning, it's okay to say, I'm doing the
I
day-to-day
don't mind someone
operation.
else being on my grant, if it helps me get the few papers that need to be first author, to get
But
the
it needs to be
noise,
clear. It needs,
to be able to apply for grants. I think that's the natural thing, but what we lack here, that I see happening more in the basic research in labs. And yes, there's politics and there are bad PIs and everything, but for my experience in Berkeley, I see my husband, they have a system that goes, you have a PI, you do the research, he applies for the grants, you help him write for her. And then at one point you become the one that's applying.
Yeah.
And we as physicians, we don't have that. It's not natural for us.
no, it's not.
It's
That's
not.
why we're bringing this
Right.
here.
And I think the faculty, if they want us to publish papers, that's kind of help we need from the faculty of medicine, that connection and that pyramid of
You need some networking.
some
events.
networking and stuff, and to have someone helping us at the beginning.
It's a grant for a help, this is a startup.
Yes.
We
There you
do
go.
it together.
Right. No, I think that's if I,
With
now
no
I understand
auditions.
the problems we have. Because if I have a beautiful idea for research, let's say, but I need someone to help to give the questionnaires.
You
It's
So-
know,
not
like you can
so
only find someone good enough to get the big grants only in the university, only in
Right.
academia.
Yes,
So-
unless you're very well renowned, unless you're Mayo Clinic or
Yeah.
something like that.
But,
But Dana, this is why, partly what the research institute can do
Okay,
is create that
I'm
connection.
not complaining, I'm just,
yeah, but
And
you're
And we've
right.
done this.
The
in the
Shakef,
summer,
right?
yeah.
what I feel we need to go to the next.
Like even for example, Mohammed, who's not here, his project has Michael Blank, one of the Bar-Ilan researchers, as because there's it's not just the money and that it's also access to certain.
Yeah, I can ask
tools,
Mary
etc.
Rudolph or
Yeah,
Sebastian, but
you can ask.
we need that.
Right.
Okay. Do you want to carry on or do you want to take a little, like a 5-10 minute break?
breakfast
Yeah.
break.
There's
Or a cup of coffee or?
Yes. Do you need a break?
I don't need a break, whatever you guys want.
Should we take 5 minutes
There's
to
some
get a?
sandwiches.
This is what I do at work every day, so it doesn't matter.
But you don't drive.
Right.
Okay, so I wanted to continue by describing the process after the proposal is submitted. Okay, it's, again, as with everything I've said today, this is very general because every foundation is slightly different in the way that they deal with things. Because there's basically two types of general foundations. They're the foundations that deal with things on a peer review level, and they're the ones that don't. Okay, so the ones that deal with things on a peer review level, the way that it works is that you have to submit the proposal by the date that they state. Most foundations nowadays, it's an online submission, whether it's via some sort of web application that they have, or whether it's by email, that it gets them. It's rare that foundations want hard copies. In the past, we used to have to submit things with 15 copies, 15 copies of an 80-page, packet is very time consuming and, then you have to make sure that it gets
Apply
there.
for a budget to.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's happened that the taxi driver got a flat tire on the way. We've had issues. Every university has had issues with these type of things. So the proposal gets to the foundation. Then the foundation, they need to go over every one of the proposals that they get. And the first thing they do is they check from the technical perspective that everything fits in with their rules. Okay, as we talked before about the pages, about the font, about all the sections are there, you know, that the proposal is complete. It takes them usually about a month and a half to go through all of the proposals to make sure that, you know, as far as they're concerned, as I mentioned earlier, they want to weed out whatever they can along the way to make their work a little bit easier also. So if there are things that they can reject on technical reasons,
They do.
most of them they do it without a conscience at all. Some foundations will notify you right away that it's been rejected. Some make you wait until the end to find out that it didn't even go out to peer review. I don't know which is better. It's better to know, but from their perspective, they don't want to notify people early because then those people are gonna start complaining
Right.
now. You know, as opposed to them having that one window of time where everyone's complaining that they didn't get funded, and it doesn't matter why you didn't get funded, you know, whether it was from technical perspectives or not. So my job is to make sure that we have 0 rejections. I'm happy to say that I'm very good at my job. Bar-Ilan has one of the lowest rejection rates of any university in Israel.
You mean rejection on technical?
Rejection on technical aspects, right?
On the 7 words.
But basically what you're saying is because there's so many, the volume is so high, any excuse they will have not to look at your application, they will, which makes sense. It's kind of an
Yeah, of course.
easy,
It's easy out
and I
for
can
them.
understand that.
You know,
They-
you
they
have
are
to be able
overwhelmed.
to follow instructions, right?
Well, you know,
They are
It's
overwhelmed.
true. It's
like
what
what
we
they
tell
say
our
about
kids,
school strikes.
and we don't know how to
Kick
do it
people
ourselves.
out for the minute reasons, because they have too many
But look, on a different thing, I'm a journal editor and you get hundreds and hundreds of papers. If someone doesn't bother to actually read the instructions, then, you know, maybe it doesn't, I don't think it's
Right.
unfair. I mean,
It's not, that's the thing, it's not unfair, because it's not as if you weren't warned beforehand that you need to.
No, it's also if someone is not particular to begin with the instructions, how can you trust them to do their
Exactly,
work later?
you're right,
Like you need to be very meticulous in what you're
100%.
doing at all levels.
correct.
It shows about your personality, it
Right.
shows about who you are.
הומניטרי, כן.
למה יש שם?
maybe we should study that as over representation of people with OCD in the academic world.
היה OCD.
Is it the same thing? OCD and OCD?
OCD,
We'll talk
it's
about
what
it.
it's. Do you want to talk about?
No, but
They need to
if
see
someone
your,
has it, if someone has it, then it's a personality disorder.
need to see you're serious enough
Yeah.
to pay attention to what you need to do. Because
100%.
then you're gonna pay attention to what you do in your research.
Hopefully. Exactly, right. I completely agree with you. Okay, again, I'll use the ISF as an example. The ISF, every year when they go through all the proposals, so they send back to all the universities, corrections or rejections, okay? Depends on what the problem is. Sometimes there are little things that they're willing to let it slide, and sometimes
On the
not.
first round.
Yeah.
On the first response.
Yeah, first response. So last week, we got the email from the foundation, the submissions were a month and a half ago. Okay, we had one thing that was returned to us in order to correct it, and it was because someone didn't put an asterisk on a particular file that they needed to put it on. That was it, and they said, you have 2 days to fix it, and that was it. Because one of the things they use there is that actually, I'll explain it afterwards about the process. And by accident, I got an email from one of the other, that they were meant to send to one of the other universities, okay, and there were 12 corrections, rejections. No, it's,
You were happy.
I wasn't happy. It's not that I'm happy. No, I was happy, but why was I happy? Because it shows that me and my team know how to do our job. That's what made me happy. Not that the other researchers got rejections or corrections. Doesn't really make sense from that perspective. But that's why it's important to work with somebody who has experience with these type of things. Okay, so then at that point, the foundation has a committee that sits on all the proposals that they got. Now, depending on the foundation, they might have one committee, they might have 30 committees. For instance, the ISF, I think, has like 30 committees, because each committee deals with the particular fields of research. You know, they're not gonna have the proposals from physics and history together. You know, you're gonna, and so what they usually have is they have one person who has been chosen to be in charge of this particular committee, and then they bring in 5 or 6 other people in their field. They could be from around the world or from depending on the foundation. I mean, in Israel, obviously, they're all Israeli researchers that sit on these committees. But for
What's in
instance,
Hebrew? They submit in Hebrew?
no, submission is completely done in English. But because it's the Israeli Science Foundation, so only Israelis sit on the committee. But then, for instance, you have what's known as the BSF. It's a foundation that's joint research between Israelis and Americans. So half the board are Israelis and half are Americans. So they do it via Zoom or BSF, Binational Science Foundation.
Okay.
Even ISF, the reviewers are not necessarily.
No,
all Israeli.
we haven't reached the point of the reviewers. Right now, we're just talking about the committee. So the committee then sits down and says, okay, in our field, we have 100 proposals. So they split up the 100 proposals between all the committee members, and then each of them is tasked with trying to find 8 to 10 people to review each of their proposals that they've gotten. Okay, so if you have 5 people on the committee, so that means each of them has 20 proposals that they need to sit and find reviewers for. So there are foundations that make it easier, and they actually ask whoever's submitting the proposal to give a list. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about the asterisks. So what the ISF does, and they've done this for years, and it's actually very smart, is they say in your bibliography, we want you to submit the bibliography file twice. Once in the proposal, and once as a separate file where you mark with an asterisk the most relevant publications. And they use that to try and find reviewers. Which makes things obviously a lot easier, because whoever's sitting on the committee is not necessarily going to be an expert in your specific field. They're going to be an expert in your general field. Did that answer your question?
No.
No.
The question is, do the reviewers get paid?
Peer review. No.
Voluntarily?
Completely voluntary.
And CV?
Most
CV line.
Why would they do that?
Not even.
Most people don't want to put that on their CV because
Really?
it's anonymous.
So why would they?
Peer review, because they want people to same thing with publications.
You don't get asked to peer, if you start publishing, you will get, it's kind of an expectation if you're working in a field.
Okay.
Everyone does it. I agree that it's.
It's give or take. It's the
Someone
idea
is
that I'm
doing
gonna
your-
review yours and you're gonna review mine. You know, if everyone were to say, I'm not gonna do it, then no one, I'm only gonna do it for money. The idea is to move the
For
research
science.
forward. For science, exactly.
I think also are very aggressive to do
the
discussion about the
No, they try to incentivize it, things like pavilions, and shit, it doesn't really work. I mean,
Yeah.
Most people do it just because it feels it's part of it.
Right,
Hard
so
בין
So-
4 ל-5 בבוקר.
basically, they try to send to 8 to 10 people each proposal. You can also, some foundations allow you to reject certain people. You can say, I don't want these two people.
In advance, or they send
In
you?
advance.
In advance.
In
But
advance.
it's anonymous,
Yeah,
you
no.
don't know. You don't know
No,
who
they can
reviews.
send you.
They will never send you a list, you'll never know who it is that's doing the peer review. It's completely anonymous,
So.
לא,
that's another reason why people are willing to do it, because they know that they.
Especially if you work in a small field, you can figure out.
אתה שולח
Sometimes,
משהו
yes, yes.
שהוא עומד לפרסם עוד מעט. Someone wants to publish something and he's the reviewer of your work that competes with that.
That's right,
He's gonna, so
That's
he's gonna manage us,
but
so he can publish first.
but that's one of the reasons why they're hoping that there is integrity here,
Okay.
And also there's more than one person.
and if they get a review that is scathing, and they get 10 others that say, wow, this is amazing,
If you have
They're
a
gonna know.
field with many people in it, okay, so the chances are low and, but in fields where research is very specific and very few people deal with it, it's very
It's a
difficult.
flawed
Like
process.
stem
Exactly.
cells,
there's no
like
perfect, there's no
things
perfect
Ariel is
solution.
doing, it's very,
But
few people understand what he's doing.
but
And
generally,
they are his biggest
but Dana,
competitors.
you can see the reviews. You can see the reviews when you, just like on a paper that you submit.
You get a
not
copy
always,
of the
but you get a
reviews.
copy of the review, so you can see whether, whether they, but, yeah.
No, I see it firsthand at
What do you
home.
mean you get a copy of the review? What the
But-
reviewers'
but-
comments?
Yes,
Yes,
yeah, you get the reviewers comments
But
at the end, anonymously, for sure. So you could, you're allowed to in general reject people. And some foundations will automatically reject people that you've written papers with, obviously. They don't wanna.
Your friends.
Exactly. But there still are ways of, there are foundations also that ask you, besides the idea of the asterisks, there are foundations that ask you to submit a list of potential reviewers. So there, you write a list of all your friends who you haven't published with, but know you very well.
And again, it's very difficult if it's a very narrow
it is
field.
difficult.
Correct, you're right.
Neuronal stem cells, 5 people in the world are dealing with it. And they're all
Yeah.
competitors of one another.
They're all competitors, but the question is whether they're all doing the exact same type of research. They might still want to, to advance the field, not necessarily just to
They
advance
want
themselves.
money. They want to be the first ones.
Again, it depends on specifically what it is the project. So, as I said, they send to usually between,
Political interest is part of the whole.
of course. They send to generally 8 to 10 people with hopes that 3 or 4 will respond. Okay, most, you could probably about 50% of people that are asked to review say, I don't have time, I can't do it, and they just don't do it. I'm sure that it's a similar
I
number, if
think
not
most
even,
don't respond.
not even higher.
for a
Much
while.
lower in papers.
Right, no, I'm saying it's higher with the number of people that don't respond.
Most people don't even bother to tell you they're busy,
Yeah.
they just ignore the email.
Right. Exactly. So there are foundations that need to have a minimum number of reviews in order to give a response. So if within a certain number of months, they don't get enough of a response, they'll send out to more people in order to get their minimum. Okay, sometimes I've even seen cases where they've gotten in touch with the researcher asking for a list of people in order to help later on even to find people that can review. So then they get all the reviews back. And then this committee that was set up beforehand, they get back together. And each of the members of the committee have to now explain about each of the projects. So for instance, if we use the simple math that each of the people on the committee have 20 proposals they need to deal with. So then each of these people on the committee have to sit down and present,
5 or 2.
they have to present their 20 proposals
Wow.
as to, how they're ranked and where they think that, what should be funded and what shouldn't be funded. And then they have that discussion. Most foundations also have someone from the foundation that sits in on all these meetings to make sure that there is as much integrity as possible. So it's not just that, oh, okay, we're just gonna give all the money to to the people that we know and reject everyone else. They want to make sure that that doesn't happen, because if something like that were to happen, it would be very bad for the foundation, because the foundation needs to keep their good name also in the end. So then what the committee does is they then make a list and they rank all of these 100 proposals. They say, okay, these are the top 20 proposals from all of the different people that were sitting on the committee, and this is how we want to rank them. We think this is the best one, because when the reviewers review when they get it back from the peer review, it's given a score. So they use the score also, which sometimes could be changed if they see that there's a reviewer who has submitted something that shows that the reviewer has no idea what the proposal was about, or if it was completely politicized, or they're saying something that makes no sense whatsoever. So then they rank these proposals. They submit that to the foundation. Okay. The reviewers themselves, the committee, they don't make any decisions about who gets funded or how much money they're going to give each of them. What they do is they give their recommendations that this is the order that we think things should be funded.
Did they say something like, this is nothing, you shouldn't fund this at all? Or-
Well, if they're making a list,
No,
then they'll have at the
Yeah,
bottom of the
you can
list.
make- You can have 10 proposals, and you can say, okay, only 3 actually have merit, and the ranks 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And then throughout the rest, the other 7, of course, shouldn't fund it.
Of course. Because they also, when they submit it to the foundation, they're going to submit it with their score also. So they can say, okay,
It's not
this
only-
one's a 99, and this one's a 97, and this one's a 95,
And so
and all the rest are 60 and below. They can do that. Then obviously the foundation is not going to fund those. And then it goes back to the foundation, and the foundation then has to deal with it. They have to take all of the various committees that they have and then decide how much they're actually going to give for each of these proposals, each of these projects that they're now going to fund. So, like I said, this whole process takes quite a long time. It's a 7 or 8 month process for the ISF. The NIH takes, I think, 9 or 10 months, if I remember correctly. They're different. Different foundations have their different timetable. Which earlier someone asked if the foundations have numerous deadlines. So some do, but because it's such a long process, they generally try not to have concurrent sessions because it adds that much more work to them. There are foundations that have twice a year, 3 times a year, whatever it is, and then they have people doing, different. The committees are at different stages throughout the course of the year, so they have them running concurrently. There's a second type of foundation, which is not peer reviewed, and they basically have a committee. And the committee themselves sit down and make the decision about whether they want to fund the projects or not. In general, these committees are mostly made up of people from the foundation themselves, with 1 or 2 science advisors or whatever, who can, give them ideas as to what they think from a scientific merit.
Then they don't have to be from that specific field.
Right.
And
Exactly.
is
Which
that a good
sometimes
thing or
you
a
see-
bad thing?
Can you give
I mean, it sounds
examples?
like-
Generally,
sounds like
it's
if you
generally a
have-
bad thing.
You have a very.
It's generally a very bad
An idea that can look good in the press, but it's.
A peer review
and people
process
don't
is the
understand
best
it.
process.
For the
That's the
research.
process that you want to go through to get your research funded. So most foundations will state on their homepage or whatever, what type of review process it is. And you hope that it's going to be peer reviewed. I know, for instance, the university looks at foundations that don't do peer review process in a very bad light. Because it's things are supposed to be funded based on scientific merit and not with other reasonings along the way. Okay, so most of the foundations that I deal with are peer reviewed.
Are there major ones available in Israel that are not?
I mean, most of them are donation, most of them,
Yeah,
most
donations
of
are
them,
different.
it looks, it's more of a system that's similar to donations.
Gredinger Foundation.
Gredinger, Dahlia Gredinger?
Dahlia Gredinger.
Yeah.
They are not peer reviewed.
No.
Quite
But
large.
they
but-
specifically deal with cancer, so they have, they do have,
Oncologists are all.
right, they have scientists that are on their committees because they're dealing with a specific field.
Yeah.
But they also, if I remember correctly, they don't give very much money and they don't give very many projects. But also, it's very limited also, I think it's only within a few years after getting,
It's
it
it's not annually. It's every 2 or 3 years.
could be. Right, it's not a,
But it's 200K or something.
Is it?
I think. So.
but I think it's just for, is it just, I think it's just for young researchers.
Hmm.
I think it's for people
I was
within a
not.
certain number of people. Ah, you got it once?
No,
No.
I didn't. I applied.
איזה ניסיון עשיר יש לך.
יש לי הרבה אלוהים. 10% I have, not 30.
Okay, but the idea is that I can guarantee you the day that you get that you get a letter saying that you were funded, you're gonna forget about the fact that you were rejected beforehand in the past.
But you know what is the biggest foundation in Israel? This is a quiz.
A quiz. The
You
biggest
want a hint?
pop quiz.
A hint?
Yeah.
No. It's ongoing now. It's gonna be published in a month or so.
The biggest foundation
The
in Israel.
biggest foundation ever.
Foundation.
It's once a year. It's a routine. It's a it's a quiz.
I understand that. I'm trying to think of.
Ah,
No, come on.
okay, once a year.
Once a year.
Foundation, once a year.
Once a year.
Lots of physicians, lots of academy, lots of pharma, everything, big money. 500 billion shekels a year. That's a grant. Israeli basket,
Basketball?
the process is the same. Israeli basket. Not basketball, Israeli basket. Israeli basket, Sabriut, once a year.
Okay.
Applications, deadline, committees, peer review, big money,
Okay.
medications. And it's now
That's on a different scale.
Yeah.
oncology business.
Okay.
נכון, לא חשבת על זה.
אני לא מתעסק עם זה.
זה אותו דבר, זה אחד לאחד.
No, but there are there are specific research grants from the
From Misad Abriut.
Yeah, like the chief scientist
Yeah.
and all these kind of.
But the chief scientist is a lot less than what they used to. Most of the money now goes through the Madan Rashi.
Belongs to what you said. Is it almost like?
No, not the Misad Abriut, the Misad HaTashtiot, Misad no, Misad Madan is a very, very low budget also. Through Misad HaChatshanut.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But we can apply because we might.
Right, but it's not even through us,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's,
משרד חדשנות, בעיקר משהו שונה משרד חדשנות.
אפשר לחדש. Yes, what else would you like to?
A few questions. So, guys, one thing I want to ask is about framing, because for example, like Dana's project, for example, looking at postpartum depression in people attending pediatric emergencies. It could be an emergency medicine project, it could be a psychiatry project, it could be an obstetrics and gynecology project. So can you talk a little bit about public health framing, depending, like kind of matching the, because sometimes you see opportunities and it's not exactly what you have in mind, but you can.
Okay, all right. So one of the things about when you're applying for research is to try and find the proper foundations to submit to. And basically what you can do is you need to try to cater to this particular foundation based on what, based on your research. So they're asking for something in particular, and if it's one of the zaviot of your research,
I have to
so then
emphasize
you
it.
emphasize that
Yeah, I
aspect
don't
of
think
it more.
emergency medicine is gonna fit here, but the others might.
Right. I mean, from what I know, I think yours is mostly public health.
Public health.
Exactly.
But if you had a
It's
grant
finding the-
specifically looking at saying using the emergency services.
Using, but
as a
emergency
setting-
people, the typecast of emergency medicine physicians is they don't care about these things, and I think grants for emergency medicine will go to high acuity or all kinds of scales of when to do CT or not to do CT. They are not, the usual people who deal with emergency medicine, they don't bother with these kind of things. It's my thing. So
Okay,
I
no, but
think-
the idea though is that you need to focus with your project on what the foundation says they're
Right.
looking for.
If.
That's what it comes down
Yeah,
to.
okay.
And what that does, and on the other hand, is it gives you an opportunity to submit a similar project to numerous foundations
From different angles.
from different angles
And
and different
is it possible,
perspectives.
is there a way to find other applications to the same foundation based that of similar projects?
Meaning, have they funded something similar to yours?
Is
Or you're talking
there,
about-
is there a place where I can look for other applications that they accepted? And see if there's a project similar to mine?
Most foundations, and not all, have lists on their websites.
So I
of
can go and I
previously
can see what
funded
they
projects.
see something similar, then I can see how to write
Yes.
mine, how to.
Yeah.
to
Right.
phrase
And I mean, one of the things that we also look at is sometimes we'll see a foundation in a particular country and we'll wanna see if they fund research outside of their country. They might say that they fund
But then.
research outside of their country, that they're willing, their foundations in England, for instance, that say that from any international country you can submit. But then if you look into the list of what has been funded, you might find one or two.
Yes, Americans.
American funds is
It's very
something else.
difficult for non-Americans.
Depends on the foundation.
Okay,
It depends on the project, depends on the foundation. There, the first thing you need to look at is eligibility, to make sure that they're willing to entertain the thought of funding research outside of their given country. Specifically in Israel. I mean, they might just say international, it doesn't matter, or there are foundations that will say specific countries that they're willing to fund it. And then after you see that, you need to go and look to see if they actually have funded things in other countries. Because just because they say they're willing to, doesn't mean that they have. Now, for instance, the NIH and some of the other federal foundations in America, they will fund research outside of America, but one of the things that you need to prove in your proposal is why should they fund something outside of America? So the idea is that, okay, no one else is doing this research. Or I have a specific group of people that I'm doing this research on that you can't find anywhere else. There's a perfect example that I always bring up, that there's someone in Bar Ilan that a few years ago, she won a grant from the NIH dealing with PTSD. And it all had to do with how people respond to after terrorist attacks and things like that. So they were able to bring examples of people. They were able to bring they were able to show that, okay, here we have a population which we can do this research on, where other places in the world don't necessarily have it. I've also seen people who did research comparing terrorist attacks here in Israel to 9/11 and things like that, which, if you have some sort of linkage, that will also help and things like that.
But this is important because if you, and personally, I still struggle with that, if there are really good opportunities, like matching finding the perfect grant to do exactly what you do sometimes is difficult.
yeah, but.
Being a
you
little
can-
bit flexible to say, maybe I can add this extra, like a comparative element or something that could make you eligible. It's worth thinking about.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
The other thing I want to add, I don't know.
One last thing I want to say about that though is that I even know a researcher in I mean, it's less relevant to specifically what you're all doing now because you have specific ideas. But there was a researcher in biology that he always was a cancer researcher, and he started applying his ideas to other diseases. And he started getting funded from those also because he said, okay, let's try and use the therapy that we're using here. Let's try it on Alzheimer's. Let's try it on, different, and the foundations were willing to entertain this because it's something that was very innovative and it's out of the box. Thinking out of the box is very helpful when trying to convince the foundation that, you want to try something that hasn't been tried before. But it's risky, as with all research ideas.
Just want to add, because I think what you said about, for example, struggling with an emergency medicine fund, for example, because I know you said that every application should be the best that you ever written, but I think this is personally, you may disagree and it's fine. I'm happy to hear that, but as a researcher, you also have to think about the cost benefit. And sometimes when you have, say, a 2-stage application and the first stage is a 300-word abstract, and you think it's a little bit far-fetched, but the effort it takes to try is not huge. It's maybe 2-3 hours of work as opposed to a 150-page application, because you never know what you never know who's reading it. And so personally, and I've had I've had some luck with some very tangential.
For 2-stage applications, I completely agree with you on that because again, it's less work. The example I brought before of taking your idea and trying to apply it to other fields, that's a perfect example that it's worth your while to try it if it's only gonna, if it's a short amount of effort that you need to put in, 100%. But if you have to sit and write a full proposal about that, you might not want to do that.
You have to think.
Unless it's a question of just taking the proposal that you already have and using copy paste to change, cancer, Alzheimer's, or whatever,
Which fund did we apply for with Popo?
Israeli health policy research.
Health policy. This is also health policy.
המכון הישראלי.
המכון הלאומי לחקר שירותי בריאות.
שירות הבריאות.
זה מצוין,
They
אם
said
אנחנו לא
they're-
נרצה שבטיפת חלב
They
לא
fund
עושים
research.
מספיק, שלא
They fund research.
חלב.
You do the research, they fund it.
They give
No, it's fine.
300,000.
או שצריך להכניס את זה כרוטינה
במיוס,
הוא
יכול להגיד במקביל לכמה...
Yeah, but you can frame things, if you manage to frame things in a policy, like this is how
so many things.
it's difficult, but then it opens up your. I also want to ask you about.
אני רוצה לדעת את היקף הבעיה. רוצה.
I want to ask about budgets because
טוב.
this is something I've struggled with, and I know a lot of us struggle with it. On one hand, there's a tendency, specifically early, to try and think, oh, I'm gonna show that I'm really, I'm gonna do things on a shoestring, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But on the other hand, if you're completely unrealistic, where do you like? Sometimes it's easier to get to apply for more money than less money.
Okay, a foundation will not fund you because you're asking for less money. Okay, that's what it comes down to. They will fund you because you're deserving of being funded.
You have to be
They
realistic.
might, they will probably give you less money than you're asking for. Okay, but I had an argument with a researcher 2.5 months ago. He said he wants to submit something because they're pressuring him in his maklaka that he needs to submit, but he doesn't want to submit. So he wants to take something that he submitted a few years ago and it was rejected, submit it again as is, and ask for 1 shekel a year.
1 shekel a year.
1 shekel. That's all he needs. He said, I don't need money. How's that? He said, my wife is rich. I don't need money. He really said that to me. And I said, well, you can submit that, but it's not going to get to the foundation because I will not approve something like that because it's just a joke. It says, it's.
What are you asking?
It is a joke, you wanted to make it a point. You
He
wanted
wants
to make a map, you wanted to
He
make
wants
a
to make a
point.
point, but it's not,
It's not worth your
And it's
time.
not, it's
No,
not
it's not
for
good.
him, it's for the research.
exactly.
But trying to cut corner, like trying to downplay what you do to.
It's
It's
not,
not a
that
good
doesn't,
tactic.
that doesn't help, because in the end, in the end, you wanna do your research. And if you don't have the funds to do your research, then you're in a problem.
But on the
So
other hand.
to ask for a lot less isn't gonna help you, because you're not gonna, there's not more of a chance you're gonna get funded because you're asking for less.
On the other hand, they don't like people inflating the costs.
Of course,
They also see that, I mean.
Of
they-
course,
But I've actually had, unlike what you said, it happened to me
but if you're
twice.
if you're doing a pilot, that's a different story also. A lot of times people will do a pilot, which is a shorter project to see the feasibility of something with the hopes of afterwards submitting something bigger. So obviously the pilot project, you're gonna ask for less money on, but you still need to show everything that you need to do it and not cut your costs on what you're asking for with hopes that they're gonna fund you because of that. You want them to fund it because,
I think you have
They
to be
think it-
fair, you have to ask something that's realistic. You might ask for a little bit more where you can, because you know they're gonna, but don't ask something that's out of the
No, but it's
blue.
also, it's
Of
also
course.
about the scale, It happened to me once that I applied for a project. And the response, this was from an American foundation, and this, we really like the idea, but it's not ambitious enough. Can you rewrite and ask for more money?
Really?
Because they also have budgets that they need, they don't want to be, they don't want to have a surplus by, because they have people donate. I mean,
right, if it's a smaller foundation that was,
I guess what I said is.
I'm assuming they were dealing with a specific field.
See it a
And,
lot,
you know, It happens, it's rare that that
Yeah,
happens. And did they give you funding in the end? for-
Yes. I just added a couple of workshops.
Okay, if that's so.
Yeah. But you don't want a project to look like kind of like a student project in, done with 3,000 shekels.
Right.
Great.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, you want- First of all, I wanna circle back to what we asked in the beginning. So you said.
Overhead.
So I'm gonna package this in a broader context, is how you manage a budget once you get it. Technically, I mean, I have no idea how that works. And then complete the answer with the overhead, if you are not allowed to. So they take from the grant?
No,
I don't
they
understand.
can't take from the grant, that's the whole thing.
So I need to understand.
Okay, so once you win a grant, then the foundation sends you a letter basically saying, okay, you've won X amount of money, and this is how it's broken down. Okay? This is the amount that you can use for personnel, this is the amount you can use for equipment, this is the amount you can use for travel. Obviously, you need to adhere to what you requested in the original proposal. Most foundations will not let you change, they'll let you move between different CFIM if you ask permission, but they won't let you create a new CF that you didn't ask for. So what we always suggest is, if there's something that you think you might need,
Just put it in a safe.
ask for the minimum amount for that.
Okay.
So that later on, if you need it, you can use it, and if you can't use it, then you can move it to something else, okay? So I don't know how it works in Ziv, so I can't explain how that works. I'm assuming the money comes to the research office here, and then they open up a Ziv for you to be able to use the money for that. So you need to, if you're paying for personnel, so you have to submit, the forms in order to set up a contract for somebody, in order to pay them through the course of a year or whatever it is. This is the amount, and they know to take it out of this particular CFTC. Okay.
If you get a grant, I suggest you come and speak to me, because you want to make sure that your grant doesn't go into refurbishing the cafeteria, which has happened before.
Right. I mean, Bar Ilan, the way that it works is that we know that the money is earmarked for us, and then there's also a system. There's a system, there's a computer system that through the computer system, anything that you want to use from your research, you do through the system and you request, that I need money for
But
this.
essentially, the money goes into Ziv or goes into the university bank account,
Yeah.
so to speak, and
Yeah.
you have to apply to get the funds.
You don't have to apply.
funnel it.
Yes.
No.
You have it, it's yours.
It's yours.
But how, but you need to.
You're gonna have a letter saying that
You need to
it's yours.
transfer
So, for
it, But I
example-
wanna pay the student.
Where does the
this
money sit?
This is
Yeah, that's
an
what-
internal administrative issue. If it happens,
But end of the
speak
day,
to us. There are mechanisms.
So the loan is blank.
Yeah.
But it's a technical issue, if you're not, if the money for the overhead doesn't come from the grant, then you have to bring it from some other source. Like,
No,
still, I'm
what you
sorry,
do
I'm
is so say for example, your project costs, you do
So
your
we don't
budget and it
count
costs
the
100,000 shekel, right? And the overhead is 15%. Then you apply for 115,000 and you say 15% is the overhead and 100,000 is what I need for the grant. Most,
And then, so.
No,
this
but
comes in the
no, but your
grant,
question is,
but-
well, it's within the budget.
you need to include it in
It's
the budget.
included in the budget.
Okay, because
It's included in the budget.
But you need to include-
But that's if you cannot move,
But
as opposed to other
don't
sites.
forget it, because otherwise the hospital will tell you, you didn't budget for it, we're gonna take 50. I mean, in the
Right.
in university, they can't.
The
do this.
university, they can also, university,
can
oh, for
what?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't budget for it, you have to, well, I think that's your question, because I mentioned the fact that if the foundation says in their instructions that they're willing to accept 10% overhead, so how does the university then get 15%?
Okay,
Because then the researcher is required to find that 5% from other sources to be able to fund, to pay the university back for that, okay? People who don't have research, other research, there are ways that the university, gives a tour and things like that.
בגלל זה השולחן, את צריכה.
First with the grant, first with the grant, then,
There's one other tip that I got quotes what before is when you put the salaries, the personnel, it's not the net salary, it's not the gross salary, it's the cost of the salary to the, because there are some, they're like pensions, and all the-
right,
and it makes a huge difference.
yeah.
it has the before salary.
It's like 3 times the price.
No, it can be a milgah, but they have to state beforehand what it's going to be, and this way, that's why it's always good to speak to the administrators beforehand to find out how much does it cost, right, how much does it cost for a PhD student? And it's, there's all the aliyot hamavid and things like that you basically have to pay.
So human, like koach adam can help you with that, but say you want to pay someone 10,000 shekel a month for a research assistant growth, then it'll probably cost you 15 or 16 in your budget because pension can השתלמות.
No, what did you want to ask? So I answered everything you wanted to?
How do you rank the ביטוח לאומי Foundation in Israel? I know they have a large grant. which is-
ביטוח לאומי?
כן. יחידת המחקר של ביטוח לאומי. Highly ranked academically. It's like it's ranked as far as I know, like the ISF.
ביטוח לאומי?
ביטוח לאומי.
It doesn't work with the, it works in.
לא, זה אקדמית, זה מדורג מאוד גבוה.
כן, אבל זה עובד. זה
לא,
לא ביטוח
אבל
לאומי, איזה מחקר
זה
זה
לא-
בר אילן על ביטוח
No,
לאומי.
when we,
מלא.
no, the people that submit to
Yeah.
ביטוח לאומי are mostly doctoral students through us. And there, I think, but they don't give very much money. Okay,
Very much money.
maybe it's, you sure it's not just the hospitals then or whatever?
Maybe it's not available to universities. Maybe it's like
I don't know.
clinical care or clinical research.
No, I was offered through אשקלון, with the מכללה של אשקלון, to go to ביטוח לאומי. And they said it's very highly ranked.
Okay, first of all, if מכללה Ashkelon told you that.
Sorry, מכללה אקדמית.
No,
אשקלון.
sorry.
זה לא באותה עלות.
No, it's not.
I know, אבל זה אקדמית.
You got me on that one.
Are there websites or places where you can look for funding opportunity? Like if you don't get the notifications from the research authority, are there places where you can?
It's generally just doing cold searches for your particular field, research grants
Yeah.
in the field of that, and then just going in and looking and finding them.
I suggest that you also check your Ziv emails regularly because there are some opportunities, especially from the different ministries that come through the Na'ala, that come through them, and then we push them. But if you don't check your emails, you won't find out about it. Okay.
To which foundation do you recommend Israeli ones for small amount of money, let's say up to 50Ks?
שקל?
עד 50,000 שקל, למי להגיש? למי מהניסיון שלך הסיכויים שלי יותר טובים? נניח אגודה למלחמה בסרטן, but they don't, they are מוצפים במיליון.
So you have to be better.
No, I'm looking for somebody who with better chances for me.
No, again, I mean,
חוץ מהאגודה.
there's also
ISF
ICRF, why not ISF?
ICRF?
No, yeah, ICRF, Israel Cancer Research Fund.
ICRF, I'm not familiar with that.
Ah.
Oops,
Their offices are in New York, and
okay.
they fund only
תעשה
research,
נסיעה אליהם.
they only
תעשה
fund research, cancer research in Israel.
Really?
תעשה
אוקיי.
שאתה צריך לנסוע אליהם, ושאתה צריך ליווי של מישהי
חייבת לעשות
טוב
שם.
בנסיעות. יודעת איך עוברים בנתב"ג.
There's another foundation in England, which is a very good cancer fund to submit to. They keep changing their name. They were known as the Association for Cancer Research. And you do
Association.
And they fund Israeli research.
They fund research all around the world, and they limit the number of proposals. And they're twice a year, and they limit the number of proposals, which then gives you more of a chance if you get it in on time. Because you're not in a pool of thousands, you're in a pool of, a few hundred. And
Associations.
and they have funded research in Israel.
I'm writing it, okay.
Oh, we need you with us.
Well, we need someone.
צפת is beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful
In the summer.
view, fresh air,
I
nice
live in a colder place
people,
than Tzfat.
very diverse.
Just
Really?
מצאתי.
to conclude, what would be the top 3 things to do when you apply, and the top 2-3 things not to do?
Wow.
Read the instructions, read the instructions, read the instructions.
Read and follow.
Exactly. Well, that's true. You gotta follow them also. And like I said, don't wait until the last minute to do it. Because one of the things that I've learned over the years is that no matter when you submit the grant, if you keep looking at it, you're gonna keep finding things to change. So at some point you have to say, okay, this is what I have, this is what I'm submitting, and then you just put it away. Don't even after you submit it, don't take it out of the drawer, don't look at it again until after you're funded. And then you worry about it. Because you're gonna look at it a month after you submit it, and you're gonna say,
Whoa,
oh,
what they did.
I should have written this instead of that. Why did I have this comma? Were you the one who asked for change something with a comma? Someone called me an hour before the deadline. They said, I found a comma that wasn't supposed to be there. Can you send it back to me? I said, no. I said, if they don't fund you because of the comma.
Thank you
And
so much.
I'll find you some other.
exactly. No, well, I can find other places to apply, but